Thank you for tuning in to the EIC Marketing Experience. I'm Dustin Trout.
And I'm Eric Gleason.
Today we're going to talk about budget pacing and why it is important.
We're also going to discuss how we do our budget pacing, some other considerations to look at going along with your budget and the pace of it, and also a tool we're testing out.
So we're going to jump right in. Please leave your comments or your feedback. Here we go. Sweet. So coming here today to kind of talk about some tools and just overall budget pacing. So something that I say a lot is figuring out how to do things quicker, if there are tools to get stuff done. And so something that has been in the PPC industry or just paid advertising industry is budget pacing, and it's something that needs to be done quite frequently because you typically can't set just budgets. So just really want to get into kind of the why it's important to budget pace, maybe different scenarios in which you would pace differently or pace your daily budget or monthly budget, whatever it may be, along with kind of going over a tool that we're testing and kind of give some thoughts as to why we think it's good, how it can save time and just allow you to do more thinking through strategy rather than taking time to do math and figuring out pacing and all that. So kind of want to jump right in. So Eric we've been doing this quite a while. So what are some of the issues or what are some of the things, the annoyances, when it comes to budget pacing, what are your thoughts on just in general?
I think real easy in theory.
Yeah.
But then once you're trying to do it, you run into like all kinds of just random stuff. Like I set up spreadsheets, which work really well until anything changes. And then you change one thing in it, you forget to update something else, and everything's off, and you don't even know it.
Yep.
Real easy in theory, but then in practice, unless nothing ever changes in your ad campaigns, you're good.
Yeah. I guess to kind of take a step back when it comes to actual budget pacing. So how most of the platforms work is you put a daily budget. Let's say you want to spend $900 for the month. Let's make it easy. That's $30 a day. Instead of putting into the platform, I want to spend $900 this month, you typically put in, I want to spend $30 a day. Now where this comes into play is most of the platforms can spend an additional 20 to almost 100%, double of what that daily budget is. For example, Google just came out with something where it's you put in a $30 a day budget, they could potentially spend 60 of it. So in theory, you could go double over what you have budgeted for the month. So what we need to do is go in on a daily, weekly, whatever time frame it is, and the more you do it, the more you see the pattern and the less time it takes. But if you're launching new campaigns quite often, if you have new creative, if you're doing this right and not just running the same thing constantly, you're making, there's a lot of moving parts, and so you're constantly having to check in to make sure you're not going over budget. And so kind of what is the process that you do on some of the clients? I know that you mentioned using a spreadsheet, but like kind of can you go over the process of kind of how you do it? Like how do you pace it?
Well, so depending on what they do, like if this money has to go into these, like we don't have too many like that, but if money has to go into one, we haven't really run into it too often where, you check where it's at. Like I have percentages set up and everything so I can see like how even it is to where the month's at. And then like if we couldn't move it out of that campaign, then you'd have to go in to see like, do we have to raise the bids?
Yeah. Look
through all those. You can look through impression share. Are we losing in a specific campaign due to budget? Or are we losing, is there plenty of budget? We're just not bidding high enough to show it all.
Yeah. A lot of good points that you brought up. So I guess to kind of bring it back to like what we would be doing is, for example, let's say we have $5,000 a month. What are we going to do with that? Are we going to put it all towards, hey, we're an agency? Are we going to allocate some of it towards a few different services? Maybe this month we want to focus on video production, podcast production, and just basic production and blog production. So now we have 3 things that need to be using that. From there, what do we need more help with? And so then it's from that 5,000, is it going to be spread evenly? Is one service line more important than the other, meaning we want to put more there? So when things get going, then we start getting the data back, and depending on what targeting parameters you have set up, whether it be Facebook audience targeting or Google keyword targeting, depending on how big or small, basically the targeting parameters, how much demand is there for that type of targeting. So like video production, if there's not a whole lot, but we've allocated 70% of our budget there, we're not going to spend it. But basically it sounds like what you're doing is, let's say we get 5 days in, we reverse engineer, we're supposed to spend $900 a month. How much that equates to $30 a day. 3 days in, we should be at about $90. But if we're only at 20, there's something that we have to do.
Right, and that's where you look at, like I said, are bids too low, or even are there even enough people looking for this? And that's where then you got to look at too, kind of pull back and be like, should this be in a different campaign? Because it's not going to do anything here. Or you can go in and you can try to create new ad groups if you haven't already created all the ones you could think of.
So essentially just you can either reallocate it to something else or essentially see if you can find additional targeting that would open it up a little bit more. Maybe you're just super granular and super segmented. Maybe you just come up a little bit more and just reach a little bit more. You're not as targeted, but it allows you to spend it.
Right. So that'd be like, say we were targeting just like commercial production or something. If we were only targeting that and we find out, well, no one's really looking for that exactly, so we could pull it back to create an ad group for video production company, something like that. It's a little broader, and then make our ads really specific, so we're still getting the same message across and trying to get those same people while still filtering out with the ad text people that aren't looking for like commercials.
Yeah. No, I love it, because essentially from the gate you're just going super targeted. If there is volume, you can spend it, great, you're probably going to see the results. But if you're starting to see where you can't spend 100% of it, then it's kind of opening up the net, targeting a little bit more, but then adding in additional negatives and filtering out people that we might not want. It takes more time to do that, going through the negatives and who we don't want to reach, rather than just setting something up. But then it's a matter of just being more efficient with the overall budget.
Right. And whereas like if everything's even, we can just pull back and kind of look at, well, no one's looking for this, but are people looking for like podcast production company? And we can just take some of that over there and just kind of move it around the campaigns versus trying to expand on an individual one.
Yeah, and really where that'll come into play is kind of as a client, can you move these budgets around? Say we can't spend it in video production, can we move it over to podcast production if we see that we're getting performance there? And then some other clients are like, no, we have to spend this. So then it's a matter of really identifying what the objective is from the client or what we want to do, and really thinking through what's the best strategy to execute on what's wanted. If we want to spend that money in video production, then, and to your point, we then start maybe not getting as like corporate video production. Maybe we just back it up to video production. We're going to get a lot more people that might not fit into who we are.
Music video production, like
there you go, music video production.
Anything.
So then it's going through and making sure we filter that out. So let's filter out the keyword music, or it just takes more work, and really getting a sense of really what the objectives are of these campaigns, of the client, of what we're trying to do, and then just making sure that we're doing the things within the parameters that they want. Loved how you mentioned if it's not spending, to figure out how to spend it elsewhere. So what are some of the numbers that you look at to identify if we're not spending here and we have the opportunity to move it to one of these buckets? What do you look at to really, or what numbers do you really look at to see, well, we should spend it here rather than?
I mean, first I'll look at like impression share and like lost impression share by rank and budget to see if there is any more anywhere.
Yeah, and real quick, that is basically so you could see how much of the market there actually is. So impression shares, let's say you have 100 people, you're only hitting 50 of them, so you're only hitting 50% of the market, or you're only getting 50% of the impression share. We can then see, are we missing out because maybe we're bidding not as high as we should? So it's all an auction, so maybe we just increase our bid, or is it because of we don't have enough budget? It's typically a little bit of both, but what you start doing is looking at, all right, where do we have opportunity, and why are we missing it?
And then, I mean, once you find out where there is some opportunity, then you kind of look at more like CPA, or how much it costs you to get a conversion. If there's nothing there, like I know we've worked with some people that they don't really have much on the website to track, then you can look at mainly impressions and like click-through rates, see what's getting the best, because that's in essence getting them more exposure.
Yep.
If we don't have any like traditional things to like on the website to go after.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, if they don't have an action on the website, that's something that we're trying to think through and how they can actually get that going. But to your point, if they don't have it and we're thinking through on that, then it's a matter of really what KPI do we want to look at. And typically how I think of it is, what is the closest KPI? If it's not a sale, what's the closest KPI that leads to that? Basically, what's the closest thing that leads to to revenue? Is it a form fill? Is it a phone call click? If you don't have that, then are people staying longer? Typically, when people stay longer on the page, then that leads into them reaching out and becoming a workable lead, which then turns into revenue. So it's really reverse engineering. I mean, most of the time, you're not going to have everything you want being tracked, all the calls to action, everything that you want. So it's a matter of, what do we have, what's coming in the pipeline that we could start tracking, and really what's the best KPI, or what's the best metric or number to look at that says we're doing well. And I mean, this in general, I mean, I've done some audits and sat in on some stuff where even just by looking at a different KPI, it's amazing the difference in strategy that you could do. For example, I've seen stuff where impressions, or how many times you show up, it looks good because it's a big number, but is that leading to?
But then you see like their like time on page is like 3 seconds.
Yeah. And so if someone's only looking at your content for 3 seconds, do you think that person's going to reach out? Where it's like, hey, maybe we cut our impressions in half. We're not reaching as many people, but the people that we do bring to the website, maybe they're staying for 4 minutes, 6 minutes. And all of a sudden you start seeing there's a correlation between that. And I mean, some people have the KPIs. I mean, I've worked with clients where it's like, we love impressions, but it's once you get to the why, it's like, why? Well, because it looks good when we're in an executive meeting that we should have this many times. That looks good, but at the end of the day, revenue is what is going to drive success and all that. And so it's really having that conversation of, what you've been looking at the last couple of years might not be the best number to look at. Maybe it might be this number, but then it's, once you agree on that, identifying those numbers, then it's once you start seeing what campaigns, what targeting is driving those, and you have opportunity to move budget around, it's just shifting budget to those KPIs. That's easier said than done in terms of just figuring out what is good to track. I mean, that's always a huge conversation when it comes up to, is a form fill worth more than a phone call click? Is time on page worth more than bounce rate? And it's figuring out what to focus on. And as you start optimizing towards those, is see how that impacts your bottom line. But that helps you get a sense of, once you start identifying these, where to start shifting your budget.
Well, and even before that, making sure that you have Google Analytics on your website so you can see any of those.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even with some huge companies
you're pretty much flying blind without without that.
Yeah, and it amazes me how much money is spent on ads, on everything. Like, hey, we need to get to market. That's great, but if they're not doing anything, it's a waste of money. It's like, I mean, I talk about quite a bit. We need to get to market. Like losing time by trying to perfect something cost a lot by not getting to market. But if you get to market and can't track it, it's finding that fine balance where you're not rushing to market just to get to market and then you can't track anything, but also not sitting back and taking a month to get to market trying to perfect it.
And that's one of the biggest benefits of digital is like, yeah, you could get a TV commercial and you can get an estimate of how many people maybe saw it, but what is that? How do you track what happened from that?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And that's why, I mean, just in the marketing space, there's going to be a huge shift because I mean, even still, there's almost digital just surpassed, but there's still it's an even line on traditional and digital that it's to your point. You spend all this money on TV, but how many people are actually watching the TV as opposed to fast forwarding through because they recorded, or just looking down at their phone, going straight to social media until the TV show comes back on, which then what's a better use of your dollar, digital or traditional? So this gets outside of even digital, where should we shift campaigns, but this comes into a media mix and channels, and like what channels are we actually that brings up a good point. So I mean, we talk a lot about how we're messaging people, so even then it's outside of what campaign, video production or podcast production. Then you have the element of top of funnel or introducing people, or hey, this is who we are, versus asking for the sale. There's a fine balance between there, because it's bottom of the funnel, it's only so big. I mean, there's only so many people that know about you, but it's once you introduce someone, then they can get to the bottom quick. And it's just finding that instead of selling all the time, how much money do we put into branding as opposed to selling? And then it's I know you haven't really done a ton of that, but what are your thoughts on that? Or I mean, I have my ideas on kind of a timeline or strategize, but like, what are your thoughts on how to allocate? What would you think would be important in terms of, let's put X amount, 90% towards branding versus?
Well, I mean, I'd definitely put not a tiny amount at the bottom, but because depending on where you're advertising, your bottom of funnel could be like not too expensive if you're retargeting, depending on where you're at. If you're doing search, it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive, but you know they're like these are people that have seen you and everything.
Yeah.
So I mean, you still want to. I would still allocate a decent amount to that, but at the same time, you can get a lot more people typically for less at top of the funnel too.
Yep, and that's introducing yourself.
Yeah, and so I think for me, those would be kind of the two bigger spots, and then like fill out the rest.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that's, I mean, it's essentially how I think about it is I mean, kind of audit, how are they? One, is it a brand new industry? Is it a brand new solution? Are there any competitors? Like, if there's no one else in the space or doing anything, you're going to need a lot more awareness, because people don't know the solutions, people don't know the things that you bring to the table. So showing them the benefits and the features of your product, rather than saying, hey, this, like, buy from us, people aren't going to buy if they don't know what you do. As opposed to if you're someone that's 10 years in the game and you already have some brand awareness, maybe you allocate a little bit more towards that bottom of the funnel. But it's really auditing and taking a step back. Where are you at in your overall industry? What are your competitors doing? How many people actually know about you? And it's really auditing who you are as a brand. And this comes into the brand identity part of like figuring out how big are you? How much do you need to educate people before they even know that you can fix one of their problems? Like, I mean,
right. Well, and I feel like too, like, you should always have some, top of funnel, because if you're not bringing new people in, like what are you?
Yeah.
How are you growing your customers?
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, you're really going to, yeah. Well, I mean, kind of once you run out of that demand, you have no one else that's going to buy. So it's introducing yourself as a brand
right.
too.
And even if you have like a smaller budget, it's just knowing like when to switch, I guess. Like if you can allocate, if you have no one at the bottom of the funnel, you can't target them. So just, for someone that has a smaller budget, starting at top of funnel and maybe coming up with your own timeline, like, well, I want to get this many people, or like run for this long there, and maybe start shifting budget towards like middle of the funnel things like retargeting, some retargeting, maybe in video or something like that. Just kind of showing up to them again, and then maybe shifting further down to like search or even search retargeting. So then after these people have seen you a bunch, and maybe they go to Google and do a search, or they're just seeing you more and more likely to go to Google, do a search on their own, find you, and hopefully you don't have to pay for that at all.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point, and it's if you're brand new to like testing and you don't have a digital footprint, it's going to be a lot of testing. Maybe you throw a lot at the bottom of the funnel asking for sales. Maybe you throw a lot at introducing yourself. And then from there, maybe you do a lot of video, and then you shift over to maybe banner ads or native ads, or it's a lot of testing. It seems like it's funny because it's like people will be like, well, it seems like I'm throwing money out the window, but we learn that this doesn't work, but we got a little chunk from here that we can expand upon, and over time you're testing, and then you find that sweet spot, and then it's right. Then you just expand upon there, you triple down, and then basically what I try and do is, where can we put our dollars that's going to find us the quickest ROI so that it funds the learning of everything else. And right. I think the biggest issue is we could do everything, we could reach everyone, but it's most people don't have the budget to do it. So it's really thinking through, what do you guys have set up? What can we track? What can we do that's going to generate the quickest revenue, or the quickest ROI? It doesn't even need to be the greatest, just the quickest ROI, so that we have some funds or extra revenue that's going to fund the learning of expanding into the other service, the other channel, and it's just a matter of trying to find that as quickly as possible.
And kind of to your point too, being open to not look at it as throwing away money, but figuring out, because like everybody, I feel like most people I've ever worked with like think they know where their audience is, but being open to like learn from the data instead of what you think you know, and just be like, no, I want to keep doing this, like, well, but it's not really working. Yeah. And then that person most likely gets mad that it didn't work at the end, but you're like, I tried to talk to you about this.
Yeah, and that's another big point, is like, test more. Like, you hear so many times, oh, my audience isn't there. Big one is YouTube. Like, my audience isn't there. It's like, YouTube is the
Everyone's there.
Yeah, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, behind Google, which Google owns YouTube. And it's like, before you say my audience isn't there, why not set up a small part of the budget to test it, see what happens? Who knows? You might find some white space, and you might find some quick ROI. It amazes me that there's so much more time spent in trying to, hey, let's just try and test it. Here's mock-ups, this is what it would look like. No. Where it's like, all that time, we could have just, like, time is money. You could have taken some of that time and invested some of that money into testing it, and then using data to say whether it works or not. And then it's like, who knows? You might find something that is huge, and then it's like, without testing, you're not learning anything new. So outside of just like bottom funnel, top funnel, YouTube, like it's the biggest thing the biggest opportunity that I see wasted, especially with bigger companies, is not allocating a small percentage to just testing and saying, this is going to be throwaway money. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work. But that one time that it does work, it's going to 5x the money that was invested over the course of the year, which then you can use for the next year. And then you can use some of that money to fund additional testing. And then it's like, all of a sudden you look back a decade later, and you find all these, it only took 10 nuggets over the course of the year, but it compounded from turning you into a $100,000 company into a $100 million company. And it's, without that testing, you would have never got there. And it's just being open. And I mean, it amazes me how many people say no without just testing. It blows my mind going through, even internally at an agency. I mean, I've worked at agencies where, man, it's part of the reason why we started this, but most of the reason why it was no is because, that doesn't make us enough money. And it's like, but yeah, just going back to just being open to testing and be okay, or have the understanding that you're not throwing money away, that it's going towards learning and figuring out how to do better.
Yeah.
And so right now, I mean, what is the biggest thing that takes up most of your time when it comes to budget pacing? Just the entire process?
I think depending on 2 things, I think, is figuring out where to put it, like where to switch budget to, if I need to move it around, and if there's any changes. Basically, any changes to the budget, like the way that I do it, sucks, just because you're using a spreadsheet. It doesn't change itself. Yeah. So any changes to it, basically kind of just have to go, depending on how much is in your campaign. Like if it's 2 things, like probably take a second. Yeah. But just moving stuff around and basically it's not even the budget pacing in the campaign. It's just making sure the spreadsheet's correct, because using like formulas and stuff, you don't know where everything's, well, but you forget sometimes, and just making sure it's all correct so that you're not off.
Yeah. So essentially it takes time you have your spreadsheet, then you got to go through and look at this month, and then it's going through and manually pulling data, which then you got to take that data and plug it into a spreadsheet, and then you got to make sure all the formulas are correct. And then that's if nothing changes. If all of a sudden, hey, a new campaign, we need to add this, and it needs to be part of this budget. If you've already spent 1,000, then it's reworking the numbers to, all right, well, we spent this much. Now that we have 3, we need to break it up 3 ways, whatever it may be. So then it just takes time doing the math and pulling the data and then getting it in. And then even then it's a lot of data going from here to here and formulas. Right. There's a lot of room for error.
It's just like, yeah, exactly. And that's like, it's the prep work, essentially, just making sure everything's good. Like I said, if it's really simplistic, that's fine. And you may not have as much time, because I know there's been times where I'll go and do it, nothing changes, everything's good. It takes like 5 minutes. Yeah. There's other times where it's like 45 an hour.
Yeah. And so that kind of leads into what I'm excited about, what we just found. And it's basically a budget pacing tool called Shape.io or Shape.io. And essentially it does everything for you. So it's I mean, how would you explain kind of how it works?
I mean, basically you put in your info on how you want it to spend, how much you're using, if it repeats every month, if budget rolls over. Like if you have rollover and like you don't spend all of it and it goes to the next month, it'll do that for you. But you put all that in, and then how you want it to spend. Like, do you want it to just go for the month and stop? Do you want to spend equally each day? You choose, it gives you an option, and then you just let it go and check in.
Yeah. Essentially, I think, on the back end, what it looks like is all the process that you're doing is they have a big spreadsheet. And so essentially what you do is you kind of go in and you say, let's say we have a video production line or a budget for video production. Within there, maybe we're targeting Arizona, we're targeting California. We have a different targeting parameter, different setting for this. So within this budget, we might have 13 campaigns running, but we need to see how overall it's pacing. And so what you can do is set up a video production budget, let's say $5,000, and then you go through the platform, whether it be, it's really cool because you can tie in multiple platforms. Like you can tie in, hey, I have 2 campaigns in Facebook and 3 in Google. You can select all of them, and then it'll aggregate them and show you how you're pacing. And essentially, once you get halfway through the month, it'll let you know, are you under pacing by 20%? Are you over pacing? But essentially what it does is it takes that work of, all right, where are we at for the month? Taking all the data, getting it to a spreadsheet, making sure that everything is correct, making sure that nothing got left out. And then to your point, there are times when you have a yearly budget, which is broken down by month, but if you underspend by $200 this month, the $200 rolls over. They even have an option for that where, let's say we have a $5,000 budget, but we only spent $4,000. The next month it then paces to $6,000 because we have that extra $1,000. In other cases, there's times where it doesn't roll over. It's use it or lose it. Like if you don't spend it all, then you lose it. But then you can set it up that way. The thing that I'm super interested in about, like there are other platforms that do that. I don't know if about any standalone, but like we've used Report Garden and they have a budget pacing tool that kind of shows you where you're at. The thing that excites me the most is going back to where do we shift these budgets, and this tool does that. It's pretty cool. You go in and we're gonna have a call next week with them to go over it a little bit more. But essentially, you go in and you identify what KPIs, what metrics are important to you. And essentially it goes through and looks at how you're pacing. Is there opportunity to move from maybe Arizona to California because we see that people are staying longer, people are converting better, filling out more forms, whatever it may be. And so I'm excited for that. What have been some of the things that have surprised you or that you thought were pretty cool? After we've briefly gone through. We haven't spent a ton of time. We will now, but
one thing I love, just the clean interface, just from pulling data from going into like Google AdWords or Google Ads now, whatever it is, um, going into there and using the one screen. So I'm shrinking a window down and then trying to see the cost and like moving stuff, just having all that in one like clean like interface. Yeah. Dashboard like is really nice to see. And then kind of the same with the tool. 'Cause that's the part that when I had to do it would take the most time. Just going back to the looking at the little screen, scrolling back and forth to try to see where this is at, where this at. If I had some things in shared budgets and some things not, you have to have like a couple windows open so you can look at the overall and then also go back and look at the individual budgets, and just a lot of going back and forth to see all that data and having it all in one spot. And with it actually looking at the data for you, I'm excited to see how it presents that and what it allows you to do with that as far as moving them over and recommendations for where to move it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if it does show like why it moved it to where it moved. Like, I mean, because there have been platforms that we've used to where it's like you optimize towards a certain KPI or number, but then you start seeing it's like, wait, if I'm going towards like CTR or the ratio in which how many times we show up and people click, this one had a much greater higher or better CTR, but most of the money went here. Like it's in theory it optimizes towards that KPI. So what I'm interested in seeing is it actually work, and like going through and saying, was that where I would have put the money? And yeah, over the course of the month when we go and check it every week and then kind of do a end of the month check, is all the moves that it made, is this in line with what we would have done? And that's going to be the true test. And if it is, I mean, everything that you're talking about, I mean, this whole podcast is about budget pacing, how we spend money on a daily basis. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, let alone actually thinking through strategy, how we're messaging, where we're showing up. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. This is one little facet of the day-to-day management. And so all this does is allow more time to think through. Are we showing up? Should we be on Facebook instead of here? Or should we be on YouTube? Should we be doing video?
Right. Just more time to pull back and look at everything overall instead of just looking at this, plugging in a spreadsheet and spending all that time like just switching the numbers to pull back and see, well, is this where I should be putting it?
Yeah. And see, that's what cracks me up about this whole automation is going to ruin the workforce and all that. But it's like, nah, because it's not like what this is rocket science. Everyone can do it. It just takes time. But if everyone had more time to think through things more and plan things better, and maybe it allows you to come up with that one extra creative where then that piece of messaging is what hits you the home run and drives that ROI. So it's like, it's not like, okay, now we just have more time to sit back and do nothing. It's now we have more time to think through, are we messaging right? Are we, it gives us more time to then create that one extra campaign or that one extra, whatever it is. It just gives us more time to do more instead of just trying to pace our budgets properly.
Right.
And so, I mean, we have it going for two clients now, and so going to check in at the end of the month. I've compared it, and it already looks like, I mean, it looks to be on point with pacing. So already just like what used to take 30, 40 minutes to do the math and pull everything to see where we're at in a matter of seconds, was able to see, all right, well, we're 7% under or 3% over. And so literally just saved 30 minutes right there. And so what are we going to do with that 30 minutes? And it's just figuring out where to reallocate our time that's going to generate the greatest ROI.
Exactly. And I love that nowadays there's so many tools that are like, it kind of sucks in one way because everything's so segmented, but at the same time, like, it's so nice that you have all these singular tools that hopefully are good at what they do, rather than being like half-baked to throw into a set.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe one of our upcoming podcasts can be on Shift and how you can centralize all the apps and all the. Are you still using that?
Yeah.
Liking it? I've been thinking about it.
I especially, I still like it a lot for the email. Like before, when we had a lot more profiles for the emails, like
Yeah, 6 different profiles to jump in and out of.
But I mean, I still love it for that. Just like if I do something under one profile and I need to see an email quick that like we sign up for something and you need to verify it, you can just hop in there instead of having to make sure you have that browser profile open, go into your email there. And then, I mean, it's just nice having all the other things, like other tools you can use, as well as just it's got YouTube. You can do your regular Facebook in there. For businesses, you can use that for the business Facebook, but it also has the Facebook ads in there, so you can do that straight
from it. You can
it.
add all that stuff to this one window, basically.
Yeah.
And I need to do that.
So it's nice to have. I definitely still use it.
So wait, so outside of the like the tool and all that, another thing that kind of comes to mind is how you should pace is like if you have this 1,000, should you spend it? Or if you have let's keep making it easy. If you have $900, $30 a day, should you spend $30 a day, or should you front load, maybe spend $100 a day the first 2 weeks, and maybe the second half of the month you spend less? Is there a scenario that you can think of where someone or a company might want to pace a little bit differently?
The one, I mean, comes straight to mind is anyone that does events. Like if you're doing an event mid-month, like you don't want it even throughout your whole month. It wouldn't make any sense. You're not going to promote it after it.
Yeah.
So you would want to front load it, make sure, as many people as possible saw it before it happened.
Yeah. Already my mind starts racing because it's even then it's if you like load it in the back, I mean, you still need some awareness, but then it's like, are you allocating any of the budget to people that said that they're going? If you start doing that a month out, what are you doing to make sure that they're there and they don't forget? They don't right. You know what I mean? So how much budget are you putting? So yeah, we're going to scale down and not push as much in the front, but even then the people that are saying, yes, I want to go.
Well, or even not even completely like tapering your budget off, but like switching it from, those prospecting ads in the beginning when you're seeing signups, like maybe last week or maybe more, start switching the budget to like a remarketing, to like an ad that's like, hey, can't wait to see you there.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is at the beginning only reach new people, and then you slowly shift it that in the back end you're only retargeting the people that have already been to the event page that didn't sign up. And so it's a matter of, there's a couple different pieces there. It's all right, we're going to spend more closer to the event, but then even then, where are we going to spend our money reaching new people versus people that have been to the site? And so it's there's so many different ways that you can slice and dice and where you're spending money, and it's I mean, it all comes down to communication and really figuring out what the goals are, and then I mean just having that experience of knowing what does it take to reach new people and fill that pipeline, and just basically laying out a timeline that says this day we're going to spend $30. Of that 30, 20's going here, 10's going here, and then just basically creating either a spreadsheet or whatever it is to outline the timeline of what audiences, what channels, and then the daily budget or monthly budget, depending on how long the campaign is, whether if it's only a month, if it's only going to be 2 weeks, if it's going to be 6 months, and then just really outlining, and just it comes down to communication.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, like you said, like 6 months, like, are you doing a big conference, or is it like a small concert, where you're only running it for a month? And then, figuring out that timeline of, do you have 6,000 seats you need to fill up, or do you have like 100?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And then you bring up another good point. I mean, outside of just budget pacing and all that, it's really backing into what is your goal? I want 1,000 new sales, but I have $40 to get it. It's all right. Let's back into what is it going to take to get the one goal or one accomplishment that you want, figuring out what that costs. And then it's reverse engineering. All right, well, if it costs $20 to get one, if you want 100, it's going to cost you $1,600. Is that okay? And it's really just having that conversation of, so I hear too many times where it's, I got $500, I want to reach the United States and I want 1,000 sales. It's like, yes, we could target everything, but probably not hit what you're trying to get. And it's having that conversation of
well, and even like, and I mean, you can definitely try to be efficient. Well, I mean, you're going to try to be efficient with the budget, but to think immediately that you're just going to be able to do what you want with whatever money you put at it is setting yourself up for failure.
Yep. No, 100% agree. 100% agree. Can't think of really much else. Anything else you want to add? There's a couple things that came from here that are going to translate into.
I guess what can you think of for? I guess the other scenarios like pacing evenly versus like end loading your budget.
Yeah, I mean, a great example is kind of what we just went through. Is like we just started investing a little bit more into paid media and stuff, and it's coming around the holiday time, knowing that there's going to be more retailers, more basically there's just gonna be more people trying to sell things during the holiday time. It's going to increase the overall cost per click, the cost to show to 1,000 people, just overall costs are more because there's more people putting budget towards selling stuff. Now, us as a service company, most people are in the looking what to buy for family members, spending time with family. They're not so much in the mode of I want to figure out or how you guys can help me strategize with my business. They're kind of checked out. So then then what comes to mind is, all right, well, as we get closer to the holidays, one, it's getting more expensive, and two, people are less likely to want to reach out. So then it's, do we want to maybe front load and maybe as we get closer to then spend less per day so that we're not trying to compete with people that aren't even going to buy anyways? And so it's really figuring out your industry, when people are buying, and just being methodical of the overall landscape of everything. And again, if you're a toy company, you might not do as much in the summertime, but as you get closer to the holidays, that's when you start ramping everything up and spending more. So it's really knowing your consumer. When are they more likely or more inclined to want to reach out or buy from you? And then reverse engineering, okay, what does it take to create the awareness to then lead you to that spot, and then reverse engineering what that budget looks like. And so it's dependent on the industry, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. So like for us, like I said, it's during holiday time, it might not be a good idea. So then we lower it, or lower our overall budget or investment during those times. And then coming back when people have the new year, new you, we need, everyone's pumped. Then maybe that's when, the retailers back out, costs come down a little bit, but people are more willing to buy or want to talk to you. So maybe we front load right after the new year and send messaging about new year, new marketing plan, new whatever it may be. But then we front load, and then as the new year kind of dies, maybe we kind of decline a little bit and then hit that steady flow, but then kind of load up our budgets based off of when people might be excited to grow their business. Everyone wants to do it all the time, but there are different times, like around tax season. What are you about to do with the extra money, or what, there's so many different things that you can do. Once you pinpoint those things on the calendar, you kind of adjust your budget throughout on when cost goes lower, demand is higher, and just trying to find that white space. And so, long-winded answer. Well, that's my answer.
Fair enough. Can you think of any business that would just try to stay steady through the whole year?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I was gonna say something like flood insurance or like disaster stuff. Like stuff can happen at any time, but even then there's more like seasonality. When natural disasters happen. Now that there's just so much data, it's really what sparks your person to buy, and then trying to figure out what things or variables could happen to lead to that demand. And so if you help with floods and you're New Orleans, maybe during hurricane season, that's when you up your budget. But
or when there is a flood, you just
yeah.
Well, if you do insurance before,
yeah.
But I remember working with people who did like the like roofing and stuff, where it was like once there was a bad storm or something, that's when they would either sometimes follow it, or like that's when they like pumped up their budget.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Even like optometrists, like even then, it's like, everyone's gonna need it. But then it's like once you get to the end of the year, people are gonna be, oh, I need to use my benefits. I need to use so it's then you're gonna like.
Because I was thinking like Uber or something, but like you can use it all year, but you still have seasonality, like holidays. And stuff.
Holidays, yeah. Because it's like, at the end of the day, you have a lump of budget. It'd be great to be on all the time, but there are going to be different times or things that happen that you're just going to get greater ROI because the demand is there. And so I guess to answer your question, I don't think there really is a business or industry that should just be on or the same budget all the time. There are campaigns within, like, let's say you have $1,000 a month and a percentage of that's maybe 20% of your overall budget, whether it be 1,000 this month or 10,000 the next, a certain percentage should be an always on, like, hey, we're EIC agency, we help with marketing, just an evergreen type of thing, so that there's always something out there. But yeah, I think there's always going to be different demand at different times. There are different variables that cause that. And I don't think that there is actually an industry where even keel.
There is a ton of data to where if you think you should just be at the same all the time, you might want to look around and see what's going on.
Allergies during allergies. I mean, it's the availability of data now has made it a lot easier to figure out where and
maybe
when.
Pharmaceutical. That's the only I can think of where the commercials are always on and people like
that's about it. But then they just have gobs of money to do whatever they want. To do whatever they want, which is interesting because America is literally the only country that allows pharmaceutical advertising. Do you know that?
Oh, I didn't know we were the only one. I knew. I know, like we allow lawyers is weird to other countries.
Really?
Yeah.
So a lot of other, I guess, no other country allows like Zoloft. Like you can't advertise anything. Like America's the only place where you can advertise a drug, basically. So that might be the only one.
Yeah.
That might be the only one. Other than that, definitely. No one has unlimited budget, so you got to figure out.
We still on the war on drugs?
I think that might actually be coming to an end soon. I don't know. I heard about that, but then it'll shift to something else.
Right.
I don't even know. Whole different podcast.
Right.
But yeah, I think that pretty much does it on my end. Everything from why we budget pace to different ways in which you should budget pace to different tools that can help you create more time to help you budget pace.
Right. And if its shape works out well, maybe we'll have to do a month in review or something.
I'm already planning on doing something like, I'm already planning on after a month we're going to do this, and then what I would love to do is take these 2 episodes and then take it to them and see if maybe the founder or something would love to do a podcast. I'm like, hey, you guys are one of the few solutions that we found, and
because I didn't. Yeah, like I said, when I searched, that's the only one I found that was its own thing. Everything else was either part of a tool set or it was like a help article on how to do it yourself, like in different platforms.
Yeah. Yep. Sweet. So I guess the biggest takeaway is if you guys are spending money as a business, it's really taking a step back and figuring out where you're spending it, when you're spending it, who you're spending it on, and then are you spending too much time trying to spend it properly? And if so, take a step back and start using data to figure out when you should spend it a little bit better, and just be more methodical with where you're spending it so you see a greater ROI so that you can invest more in the next year and just continue to grow and build your business. And so if there's any tools that you guys have found or anything, any tips or tricks that you guys have found, would love to hear in the comments, or have you on and talk about some of your things that you guys have done. So
yeah, anything to get away from switching numbers on spreadsheets.
Yep. Sweet. So keep an eye out for the follow-up to this once we have more data and can speak more to how that actual shape.io works. And then we'll go from there. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you next episode.